Welcome. If you're new here, welcome back. If you're not, my name is Debbie Wombold, aka Minnie, and this is the first installment in my gardening on the east coast of Nova Scotia, Canada videos, to kind of give a little bit of a talk on how I started, how I utilize my properties, and life gardening here in rural Nova Scotia. We are on the east coast of Nova Scotia, the South Shore. It's like a microclimate here. So I thought it would be important, as I do a lot of garden content, to talk about how living here affects how we garden and how I got into gardening and how I still garden to this day. So, as I said uh, yesterday, this is where it all started. Yes, it is now the next day. Filming yesterday didn't go as planned. So, yes, this is where it all started. I've been gardening here on this property since we bought it 25 years ago. And I did it in various ways, but the main way I've gardened here on this property, vegetable wise, is in these raised beds. These raised beds we filled with composted manure from a neighbor, and we've grown several different things in them. We've grown carrots, we've grown beans, we've grown garlic, of course, is what is in here now. And there's also lettuce in there. There's Swiss chard in there and dill. So this is where we've started. And as far as small scale gardening goes, here in my neck of the woods, the east coast of Nova Scotia, rural Nova Scotia, we have a 70 by 70 piece of land, and this, like I say, is where I started my gardening journey. We didn't have much, but I was determined to grow at least some what I call snacking vegetables. I grew up visiting my grandparents, and my grandfather lived and grandparents lived in Liverpool, right in town. And my grandfather always had a small garden with Swiss chard in it. And he had various other things. But it's one of my best memories is always eating things from his garden. So I knew that I could do it, but I would have to be a bit strategic with what I grew and how I grew it. So, a good option for small scale gardening is a raised bed. If you can put in a permanent one, it is really good to have a permanent one. They do require maintenance. Ours is made of reclaimed wood. Um, like I say, they require maintenance. You have to keep rebuilding them sometimes, you have to paint them. In the 20 years that we've been here, we have rebuilt this twice. Like I say, they're reclaimed wood. Um, our other raised bed is right here. This one has lettuce in it, and I have been gifted with mugwort. This mugwort just showed up here and started growing. So in here, I planted some onions and lettuce amongst the mugwort, and they all seem to get along quite well. But you can see this raised bed is a lot smaller. But I do find if you want to do a small scale or if you have a small property, having raised beds is also good because you don't have to water as much. These retain the moisture quite well, and don't require a lot of water. Here, where we are, we have an issue with being able to water our properties, especially if you live right in town or if you are on town water. There are restrictions in place, and there is water shortages happening every year, even for us. I'll talk about my water strategy shortly. Right here, you can see this is an option for growing fruits and berries. This is a high bush blueberry. We've had this for 20 years, I guess. I'm guessing 20 years. And we cover it from the birds because it is a heavy producer and we eat a lot of these. So building a permanent structure around it was a good option for us. But growing berry bushes in small spaces is a great option. They're nice aesthetically, but they're also good to have for um, producing food. The other method I use for growing vegetables is to grow in grow pots. I did use grow bags. We've had high success rates of growing potatoes in grow bags. And of course, we're growing tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers all in pots. Pots are a good option if you have a small space because you can put them basically anywhere they're going to get enough sun, and they don't take up a whole lot of space. They also retain a lot of moisture. The one thing that you do have to be careful about is the heat. They tend to warm up quite easily, and so you don't want them to get too much hot sun on the pot. I would suggest not putting these on pavement. When you put them on pavement, they heat up from the pavement, and that can cause problems with your plants. Here you can see another example of growing in grow pots. I have peas in this one, which are quite quite laden. They've blown over, but they're still growing strong. Our yard needs to be whippersnipped. If you're not familiar with the page, my husband hurt his leg at work, so those kinds of things have been sacrificed in favor of getting more crucial things done on the homestead. So I have cucumbers, and these are just a patio snacker cucumber growing in there. And you can grow two cucumber plants in a nice big pot like that. So pots are a very good option for growing in small spaces, especially here on the South Shore. And they do save on watering. Everybody and their dog is having issues with keeping things watered, and that is a great option for vegetables. Uh, these are just enough for snacking for us, but there are times when I have enough tomatoes that I can share with my neighbors, um, or even sell a few. So you can grow quite a bit. And the grow pots are these grow pots we got secondhand. So if you keep your eye on marketplace, oftentimes you can find things like that up for option, or just when you're poking around at yard sales, things like that. But grow bags are also an inexpensive way. You could even use those reusable grocery bags if you wanted to. So that's a bit about our vegetable growing situation here on Homestead 1. As I say, it's a 70 by 70 plot, so not a very big plot. It's called a postage stamp plot, and I've grown a lot of vegetables here. Like I say, there are 100 bulbs of garlic in there. There's lettuce enough in there. I have 6 bags of lettuce in my fridge right now. And this bunch of peas here would be enough for a meal, just in one picking. So you can grow a lot. You can grow a lot in a small space. But the challenges of watering is one thing here in Nova Scotia that we deal with quite a bit. Now is a great opportunity to talk about water catchment. So on our eaves on the side of the house, we have a rain barrel. On my greenhouse, we have a rain barrel that catches all of the water that comes off of the roofs of the house and the roof of the greenhouse, but also if you have a heat pump. These heat pumps have little hoses that come out, and if they are on AC or dry, they extract the moisture from in your house, and you can put a catchment. I just put my watering can under this one and let it fill up, and that is a good way to conserve water for watering. Don't have a lot of shade. So certain hostas are another amazing option if you're looking for an easy to grow option for in a small space. A hosta is great, but uh, lighter colored ones tend to burn in the strong sunlight. So if you're looking like for filler, um, like I say, herbs are a great option. They do flower, most of them, and you can use them culinary or just in your home. Roses were a classic around here. However, now we deal with Japanese beetles every year. So I have stopped planting roses. I do have two rose bushes here that were here since basically we moved in, and keeping them in good shape from the Japanese beetles has been challenging. The best, and I've tried the Japanese beetle bags work really great, but for a small space, they tend to attract more beetles to your plants than they do than you find without the bag. So without the bag, I just come out in the late afternoon. I pick them off. I feed them to my chickens, but you can just stick them into your freezer, freeze them, and then toss them into your compost. Or if you have a neighbor that has chickens, they are much loved by chickens. We covered some water catchment ideas. We're covering uh, plant um, options. Like I say, herbs are a great option. The other great option is that I like to use is lilies. Lilies give you a lot of impact and they are very easy to care for, although we do deal with lily beetles. Those are the little red beetles here. And those beetles are best dealt with by, for me, by using diatomaceous earth. So as soon as I see those little red beetles, you're making a circle around the base of your lily with diatomaceous earth, and that tends to take them down quite easily. So I have lots of herbs um, that makes a really great, easy plant to fill in my gardens and an easy to care for plant. Hostas are another option. And then I have several trees and several bushes, azaleas. I have rhododendrons, roses Sharon. I have Japanese maples are another great option, but they do tend to get a little burnt in strong sunlight. So you need to make sure that you have them either in a shade, or I tend to like to give mine a little bit of spray of water in the afternoon to cool them down. What else? I have just discovered in the last couple years indigo and false indigo are beautiful big plants. They grow really nice and big. They have beautiful flowers that the hummingbirds really like, and they are easy to grow. Hydrangeas, of course. That's my hydrangea over there. You can see it's really big this year. That's another great option. I find moving to less lawn and more perennial flowers and herbs keeps you from having to water as much. Like I say, once these are established, then you can really set it and forget it. And that is my best advice for a gardener here on the South Shore of Nova Scotia, because we are dealing with droughts every year. Um, Another thing to consider is ice buildup. Years ago, I had lavender in front of my heat pump here. Um, that built up ice because they do expel water in the winter. And the ice buildup from that destroyed the lavender that I had growing there. So you need to be careful of where the ice is coming off of your house or coming off of the street. So you want to
be mindful of when you're clearing snow in the winter where that ice and snow is going to build up because if it lays on certain plants, they don't like it. Um, Salt from the road is another issue that you'll have to deal with. So, for example, I have a couple of ways I've done my gardens. Um, this one is a rock, um, like it's bordered with rocks. And these rocks came from our property. That's the one thing we have plenty of rocks in Nova Scotia. And it does well for keeping it contained, but not 100%. If you're looking for that neat and tidy garden look, um, you could invest in a nice border, garden border, but it's very easy to keep a garden. This one here has no border. I just go in there every spring with a trowel and dig a nice trench around the outside. But as you can see, stuff tends to grow out of the garden and into the lawn rather than the lawn growing into the garden, which is fine in my opinion. If you're just going along and mowing or whippersnipping, you're just taking, the extra out of that border. If you're looking at a watering situation, so if you're right in a town and you're dealing with water restrictions or water bills, you're going to be definitely watering less. So I talked a bit about my garden tour about choosing what is going to get sacrificed during a drought. Um, so if you're investing in a large tree, let's say, and you know that every year there's going to be a dry period, that tree needs to be watered for that first year and maybe even into the second year regularly. So every day that tree needs water. So having a catchment is a good idea to ensure that you can water those large trees or bushes. Anything you plant basically that year that's newly planted requires a lot of water to keep those roots well hydrated and establishing um, readily. Okay, so I think that is my installment number one of gardening in gardening on the south shore of Nova Scotia, rural Nova Scotia, on the east coast. Uh, there's a few tips in there. There's a few little tricks that I've learned, and a little bit about what I'm growing. So, if you like this, please do me a favor and leave me a comment. Um, don't forget to follow or subscribe to this channel because if you don't subscribe, um, then my videos don't get pushed and you will not see my next video, which is going to be gardening on a larger scale on Homestead 2, where we talk about um, how we're doing it and a few tips and tricks. I have another good trick that I guess I've saved to the last, and I think you might like, and that is getting some source of compost. So I don't save my kitchen compost down here, although I'll talk more about that when we go to Homestead 2. But what I have are backyard chickens here on the South Shore, here in Queens County, where I live. We are allowed to have backyard chickens, and you're allowed to have backyard chickens even if you have just a small uh, lot size. And these guys are my composters. That's why I got them, and that's what we use them for. We also get eggs, of course, but all of my food scraps um, go into their pen, and these girls eat it right up. They're waiting right now because they think I have scraps for them. And then every now and then, when the pen gets quite built up, I scrape that all out, and that is my compost. It is well composted when they're done with it, and it goes into my garden beds in the fall. And then over winter, it sits in there, and then in the spring, we plant into it. And these girls are all the more happy to be giving up their compost to me. So I highly recommend getting a source of compost. Compost is expensive and dirt is expensive. So if you can find a way to have it or make it, it's a great deal. Um, there are a few farmers around here who do sell composted manure. So if you keep your ear to the ground, you can always find a source, and getting, a load of that and just filling up your grow bags is also great. So yes, that's it. Let's end the video. And my next video, as I say, will be on Homestead 2, where we talk about larger scale farming or growing on the South Shore on the east coast of Nova Scotia. And then we'll do some tips and tricks more in depth. If you have a question, something that you need me to talk about in the next video or in my tips and tricks video for gardening here on the South Shore, on the east coast of Nova Scotia in Canada, um, leave it in the comments. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye.